Hi guys! I have another Copic coloring and card tutorial for you today, where I color Miss Lily on the Beach by Little Blue Button Stamps. This is going to be a very color intense video. It's a little bit longer than they usually are because I am coloring the whole background. It's a very simple card where I show you how you add just some layers and not any pattern papers and stuff, just layers. So it's a very quick card for the kind of card part, but the coloring took actually some time. After cutting it down, removing all of the pauses and stuff, I had over 1 hour of coloring. So this is why the video is so long. It's over 10 minutes because I speed it up by 5 times. So it's a fifth of the length, but it's still 10 minutes. It took me quite some time to color this image, mostly because I color the background. The image itself it's a little bit easier, but I am working with every image now a little more than I've done before, trying to achieve more depth, which means that I go over the shadows and colors a little bit more depending on what I wanted. Like for this, for example, for the hair, I am going over with I think 4 colors, and when I came to and have added the E50, I kind of realized that the whole hair is all too bright, so I went in and made a second go over it, and this time using the E99 as the darkest, just to make the shadows a little bit deeper. I ended up coloring the whole hair much darker, but that happens sometimes. I started somewhere and then I just add, and she got a kind of a deep honey blonde, which I really liked. I'm very concentrating on trying to make strands in the hair more and make the kind of highlights not so straight, but more in like V shapes, like they are on a natural hair. So that is one of the things that I've been really working on when I'm trying to evolve. I'm trying to get better, and I love sharing what I'm doing, and when I get better I want to kind of do it on my tutorials also. When it comes to the skin here, I start by putting out the shadows where I want them with my absolute lightest color. This is so that if I kind of realize, oh, that shadow shouldn't be there, you can't see it in the end process, so I'm just blocking out the shadows to begin with. Then I'm starting from the deepest of the skin colors, and go through them one by one, adding the shadows and enlarging the shadows. Not necessarily as big as I want them at the end, but just kind of putting them down where I want them, because I am going to go over a second time with all of the skin colors to give more roundness and more depth. I've talked about this before. The Copics aren't opaque, they're a bit transparent, which means every time you go over with a new layer, you kind of stack the colors, and due to the opaqueness you can actually get really cool effects and a really big depth in the image just by going over a couple of times. And I always add kind of the rouge before I add the lightest color, because then I can blend that out with the lightest color. And for the kind of deepest color, I'm using blue violet, because shadows have a tendency to have a blue violet tint to it. But just adding the blue violet kind of made it a little bit too blue violet, and therefore I always go over with the skin color on top, trying to make difference between roundness shadow and the drop shadows, because drop shadows usually are quite dark and have a harsher edge, while the rounder shadows kind of just go gradient. I don't know if I kind of say that correctly, but that helps to kind of differentiate between where it's the roundness that makes the shadow or where it's a drop shadow from the hair, or in her case she has a lot of drop shadows underneath that little rouge thingy on her clothes. Yeah, then I go over it. I actually have not colored her nose, or I just went over once on the tip of her nose, making that a little bit lighter than the rest of the face, to make it seem a little bit more alive. Then I'm going in with all of the pinks, and again, this is one of the times when I start with one color sequence of different pinks, and then kind of realizes when I have colored all of it that it doesn't have enough contrast. I want it to be deeper. So I decided to go over all of the colors a second time after I have filled it up, and then I actually take one color darker than I had before. So I'm going in as the darkest color at the second time around. I'm using the R35, which is a very dark color, but if you keep on blending it, it will blend itself out a little bit and don't look as stark as it otherwise do. But usually now I'm using the R35 just in the borders, but if I'm using it as a middle color, I usually use the tip to tip technique to blend it out a little bit better. But with the darker shadows, I usually leave them as they are. When you color eyes, it's quite simple. I'm actually using a lilac to kind of make the eyeball a little roundness, and then I'm using a couple of different blues to give the eye a little bit of depth. And now I start with the background. I am going to make her stand on a little beach and have some waves rolling in, and it's all the first time I'm doing this. I think if I'd done it a couple of times before, I might have got it a little better, but I still like the end results. What I'm doing at the top there is that it's going to be like the foamy thing on the waves, and if I was looking at different beach pictures, I googled, I put them up on my iPad, and then I just looked at it, had it as reference. It doesn't look the same. I'm not trying to make it look exactly as the pictures. I'm just having, I think I had 6 or 7 different images of a beach for reference, because they were from different angles, and like these little dark spots that I'm making here, they are like the bumps, like footsteps in the sand. And I found that in one image, and then I found the kind of foamy thing on the water from another image, and then I found the kind of sky meeting the sea from a third image. And that is how I work when I try to make something sort of look as something real. So, but I had a really, really fun time making the kind of beach and sea, because it was all experimenting. I hadn't tried it out. I just kind of layered and layered and layered, and that is, I think, what you have to do to get a good result. Like, for example, for the water, I'm using a lot of colors, I think I'm using 6 or 7 different ones, and trying to make this sea look like the sea. Like the B32, for example, I am going to color over it, but if I hadn't added the B32 in the bottom before I color it over, it wouldn't have had the same effect. So those were the things I was thinking about when I colored, that, for example, adding the light green in the bottom makes it look more like the water at the beach, because when you look at the water, it's a lot lighter the closer to the beach part you come to. Even you see the sand at just the edge of the foam. You actually see the sand picking through the water, because then the water is perfectly see-through, and the further away from the beach you get, the deeper the blue is, but also the sun will kind of fall differently. It's really, really fun to really observe how the water looks in the image and try to add it on the image itself. As you see here, I had a lot of like white thingies coming out from that foam piece, and if you look at those kind of images, sometimes you actually see those foam, how the foam separates, but I didn't get it how I wanted it, so I actually have colored it over. And then the photos for the sky actually disappeared because I accidentally filled up my card. But that was the image part. Now I'm actually gonna make the card, and this is the first part that I'm doing. It's a flag. I'm actually gonna throw this away later, but I thought I would show you how I put it together. It's an alphabet stamp. The big one is Violet's ABC from Lawnfawn that I'm using to write a beach babe, and I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black as the ink when I stamped. And then I'm just cutting the image down to remove the white parts and try to kind of keep as much of the sky left. And I'm measuring it up so that it have even inches or quarter inches or eighth of inches, but that is even, because it's easier for me to make a mat for it, because I love matting the image, giving it a little bit of a frame. It kind of makes it stand out a little bit more. I'm going in once again, and this time I am cutting it down to 3.5 inch because I thought the balance wasn't so good. Now I have about the equal amount of sea on both sides of her, making the image kind of weigh equally on both sides. I'm making my little flag end on my beach babe, and then I am cutting down all of my layers. And first I'm cutting down the layer for the image, and I usually re-measure the image itself so I don't cut wrong. Rather measure twice and cut once than have to cut several times. When it comes to how I mat that little flag thingy, I actually just make the piece 1/8 of an inch bigger, wider or higher, and then I let it be a little bit longer than the flag itself. And then I do as I usually do when I cut my flag, but I try to eyeball it so that I have the same angle on those pointers, so that I get them sort of the same. So I get about 1/8 of an inch of a border on the flag too. This is what I have found the easiest way to do when I do flags. Now I'm just putting the kind of card part together. I'm gonna layer all the image onto my mat. I actually cut another mat, but then I kind of figured that I needed to have something behind So I'm just using some Nina, which is the same as the card base, and I cut it down 1/8 of an inch smaller than my big mat, so that I can kind of stack the image on top of that before I put it on the card. It frames the card a little bit more also. Just happens that I cut the image equally on all of this. This just was a fluke that it actually matched perfectly on the card, which I was kind of happy. Here I'm starting to look at the flag and kind of realizing that that text is a little bit too big. I would have to cover over her feet, and I really didn't want to because I really liked the shadows that I had down and liked the image. So I choose to take Riley's ABC instead, which is a little bit smaller in the height than the Violet's ABC. And again, I spell out Beach Babe. What I like with this, with these kind of SAM sets, is they have several of the same character, so you can write out a whole word. Sadly, I couldn't write out whole Beach Babe because they didn't have 2 big B's, but that's okay. It worked out pretty good anyway. And then I make a flag the same way that I made the big one. And this is going to be just that tad little bit smaller that makes it actually fit much better on the card. One of the things was that I really wanted to have 1/8 of an inch in the left lower corner. I didn't want to add the flag lower than that, so this actually fits really good. And that is the card for today. I hope you liked it. If you do, please thumbs it up, it means a lot to me. If you have any questions, just comment down below, and down below in the description you can find all the details of the card, Copics I used and such, and links to all of the products. So thank you again, and I see you later. Bye!